Another observation that I would like to bring to light is the fact of when we were children, we had these ideas embedded into us. Maybe not specifically from education, but Disney. Disney had an entire series of princesses for young girls to watch on TV and in movies, and they were the typical damsel in distress. They were the typical, almost a heroine, but to the point where they let the men do what they needed to do to save them. The main story revolved around the women, but it wasn't the women who had overcome anything. The men would have to either slay the evil witch or dragon or whatever to save the princess. And honestly, I'm sure there are tons of girls out there who would say they never thought of wanting to be a princess, but I'm sure there's a lot more majority of us who said that at that time when we were 4 or 5 or 6, that yes, we wanted to be a princess because we wanted that happy ending. We wanted our Prince Charming. We wanted to live in a castle and have horses and magic and things like that. And even to this day, when we go to bookstores or when we even go to clothing stores or things like that, we look for these types of things that we were drawn to as children. Now, far way off for me, but a lot of people I know are getting married, and a lot of the dresses they are looking at are very gown orientated. They're very poofy, and they have layers, and they have corset for tops. They have long lace sleeves. They have veils. These are all very medieval concepts from back then when they had to wear dresses. That's what women had to wear back then. They didn't get to wear pants. They got to wear dresses. And they had petticoats and things like that. And to this day, we're still trying to sell this concept of these dresses being medieval or 21st century. And it's just a neo-medieval idea that dress stores are trying to put into us. Things like when newscasters or when people say, oh, torture is a very medieval concept, we're not giving it a good connotation. We're relaying that type of imagery to medieval torture chambers that used to happen, saying that that's a bad thing. It's almost to the point of creepy how you think about it, because think about anything that you've bought recently. It could be books, it could be Christmas presents, it could be anything. And is there a medieval tone to it? Did you buy it because of some weird word association that you thought this would be fun to play because it's an adventure game or something like that? Probably, but you didn't realize it at the time. So why are we drawn to these types of things? Like, why the Middle Ages? Why not the Stone Ages? Why not Victorian ages? Steampunk? Why not that? It's a really hard question to answer because we don't know. I don't know. Like, I'm a book blogger. As you can see behind me, I have tons of books, and I have a majority of them sitting beside me that are medieval orientated. There are covers of romance novels that are medieval. This is Highlander. It's Scottish. It takes place in the 1600s. You can even tell by the cover of it. It has a tartan. You can tell they're medieval books. Things like this, Kiss of the Highlander. The Highlander's Touch. It all has very medieval tones to them. Even in young adult books. Grave Mercy. It is a nun that is an assassin of death. It's a very medieval concept, but it has a 21st century twist on it. Even the cover is very medieval. The gown, the castle in the background, the crossbow. There are books like Defiance. It is about a medieval vigilante that is the kingdom's only hope to save whatever. And even the front of it, there's this town underneath, there's the forest in the background, which is a very medieval concept, and then there's the female character, which is a 21st century concept because she's the heroine, and she turns out to be a knight. So it's very medieval, but 21st century. There's also Venom by Fiona Paul. It is a Renaissance novel. It is a Renaissance mystery novel. That is a medieval concept. The Renaissance is still in medieval times, but you can still see by the Harlequin mask that she's wearing, the writing even. It's very medieval. It's very romanticized. These types of things that are romanticized, you would never think were medieval until it's specifically pointed out to us. Even a new one that's coming out. It's called Falling Kingdoms. It's by Morgan Rhodes. It's a Canadian published book. And it is about a kingdom basically at war that falls, and it has a main female character and 2 male characters. And even this is a very medieval concept with the writing, but also in the background, the circle you see there at the back, that is in a specific cathedral or castle type of architect design. It's medieval, but you would never think so, because it's not specifically displayed as a medieval novel. It's displayed as a young adult fantasy novel. So there are many types of reasons why we're drawn to these types of books and types of video games and types of TV shows and movies and fashion statements. It's because, for me at least, it's because I've always grown up thinking that the Middle Ages was a fantasy-driven world, that a highly romanticized world. And when I got older, I discovered that it's not. It did have the stories and myths of King Arthur and Robin Hood and things like that, but they were just myths. They didn't exist. And when I learned that, when I was a teenager, or when I was 13 or whatever, it was a little heartbreaking, because as a kid, I used to watch Disney movies, I used to watch Disney TV shows, and I was always drawn to those medieval shows, to even the ancient Greek shows with like Hercules in them and stuff like that. And it was always interesting because it always took us to a new place, which technically is an old place because it's in the past, but it's new to us because we live in the 21st century. And I know that may not make sense, but think about it. These adventures, these quests, it takes us away from reality and tells a story. And the type of story we could create and make up on our own, but watching it and reading it, it makes it more realistic. It makes it more real. And I think the reason why the 21st century really draws people into the Middle Ages or draws them to that era is because they can portray it as a time of enchantment, as a time of dragons and knights and adventures and quests, and it's epic. That's basically the word I would use, is it's the real world, but not really, because it's history, but we're making it fun by adding in things that really didn't happen. Adding in magic and wizards and warlocks and Merlin and things like that. We are taking away from what it truly was and adding in our own concepts to romanticize it, to sell something, to tell a story. That, to me, is what neo-medievalism is. It's the 21st century taking medieval concepts and basically revamping them. So why did I choose this for my final project? I find that interviewing outside sources is probably the best way to get secondary sources. They may not be scholarly, but they're truthful. They're not biased in any way. None of them have history backgrounds. They may have interest in history, but they don't really truly know what the Middle Ages were. They can assume from TV shows, from movies, from books, but those are assumptions. Those are notions, they're preconceived notions, and once light is shone upon the Middle Ages and what it truly was, some people are a little discouraged, I guess you can say. But why the Middle Ages? Why did I take this class? I love history. that's basically it. I love everything to do with history, and if I could combine it into literature that I'm currently reading or currently playing or watching, then why not? It's a great way to learn. It's a creative way to learn. It's a fun way to learn, actually. We learned a lot in this class, even though it is a neo-medieval type of concept. I'm probably going to go to medieval times now because a lot of people have said it's a lot of fun, and it's going to probably open my eyes to a lot of things that we talked about in class, and it's probably going to take away from the magic of being a show, because I know that it's not real, and I think that's the thing that people want when they search out these specific medieval types of games or books or video or TV shows or movies. They don't want to be reminded of the real life. They don't want to be reminded of reality. They want to be taken to a place, plopped down in the middle of it, and forget about everything else. They want to be told a story. And I guess that's the answer I can give you currently of why the Middle Ages. Why are people drawn so much to it? It's because it's a story. It's a rich and enlightening and enchanting and magical story that you can make whatever you want. It doesn't have to be the King Arthur story. It can be anything you want it to be. You have a lot to work with, and there's always new concepts coming out, and there's always going to be TV shows, there's always going to be ads, there's always going to be something medieval in the 21st century. And I can see why. It is exactly what they want it to be. It sells products. It sells movies. It sells TV shows. And this has been going on forever. It's not just now. Indiana Jones is a perfect example of that. He did a movie about the Last Crusade, of finding the Holy Grail, of the Knights Templar. It's a very fantasy-driven story, but it has no fantasy elements to it. It literally is following history throughout its time frame. Maybe at the end there was a little bit of fantasy. I can't really remember the entire story, but it's a highly historical story, and that's what it is. It's a story, though. It's not based really on any historical events. It's based on series of historical events that could or could not have happened. The Templars were real, but was the story of the Last Crusade real? You don't know. It's just a story. So there's so much to talk about as to why the Middle Ages, as to why people are drawn to it. And that's why I did a series of interviews, so you could watch them, and then you can watch this movie as the last one, the last final observation, and see what you think for yourself. Why are you drawn to the Middle Ages? Why do you read those books? Or why do you play those video games? Why do you travel to those places? That's another perfect example. Is it to see the castles or cathedrals? Is it to be where a great battle happened? Or is it just to go to see the ancient world of Europe? It's been around longer than Canada. So ask yourself why next time that you go and pick up a video game or a piece of clothing or even food, for example. Why are you doing it? You'll be surprised what you find out.